The OnePlus 15 is the first phone in the US to launch with the new Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. We've tested it extensively, played tons of games, ran benchmarks and reviewed the camera while comparing it with the iPhone 17 and the Google Pixel 10. I'll tell you one thing right at the start, we measured really high temperatures during our review. We'll start with the hardware and performance. Inside the OnePlus 15 sits the brand new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 chipset. That's the successor to the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Depending on the model, you'll either get 12 or 16 GB of RAM and 256 or 512 GB of fast UFS 4.1 storage. Everything runs exceptionally smoothly and apps launch almost instantly, multitasking works flawlessly, and I've edited tons of photos and it never stutters. Great, that's what you'd expect from this chip. In the Geekbench 6 benchmark, the OnePlus 15 gets a new top score in the multi-core test, making it more powerful than any smartphone we've tested to date. It even beats the iPhone 17 Pro Max, which is significantly more expensive. The Galaxy S25 Ultra with the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor also is beaten. However, the current iPhones still maintain an edge in Geekbench GPU test. That's similar in the 3D Mark test. The OnePlus 15 is ahead of both the iPhone 17 and iPhone 17 Pro Max in the Wildlife Extreme benchmark and the Solar Bay test. OnePlus is slightly ahead of the Samsung S25 Ultra too, but the gap isn't that big. We were a bit disappointed during the first run of the Wildlife Extreme stress test. It crashed initially. Without a case though, the test ran through well, but we measured temperatures of over 122 degrees or 50 degrees Celsius on the body and screen. Perfect for winter. In fact, this shows that the OnePlus 15's cooling is quite good and it manages to properly dissipate all the heat outwards. That's because the stability score is surprisingly good, meaning it can maintain high performance for quite a long time. And in gaming, the performance is exactly as you'd expect, really good. Delta Force runs wonderfully on the very highest graphics settings and looks great. Unfortunately, you can't set it to 160 FPS here, but I don't think you can yet. It should be possible soon. It can reach a full 165 FPS in Call of Duty Mobile. Sure, the game runs on almost all devices, but 165 FPS is fantastic because the display can handle that too. Fortnite runs beautifully smoothly on max graphics settings. The OnePlus 15 achieves frame rates between 90 and 120 FPS here. It gets a bit warm but remains nice and stable. Zenless Zone 0 also runs constantly at 60 FPS on the highest graphics settings. It's a shame that many games don't allow for more FPS, cause there's still a lot of headroom here. Wreckfest, a graphically intensive racing game, also shows consistently high performance. Here too, the OnePlus 15 achieves stable 60 FPS at max settings. It really looks great. So it's undoubtedly one of the best gaming phones on the market, one that's also got plenty of headroom for future titles. And the display is designed for gaming too. The OLED display measures 6.78 inches and offers a resolution of 2772 by 1272 pixels, which corresponds to a pixel density of 450 ppi. It supports an adaptive refresh rate of up to 165 Hz, which is significantly more than the standard 120. It gets up to 1800 nits bright in high brightness mode, and it's protected by Gorilla Glass Victus 2. Unfortunately, the peak brightness for HDR content isn't listed in any datasheet. Typically OLED, the display looks great and actually gets pretty bright. In a direct comparison, it gets brighter than the iPhone 17 and almost as bright as the Google Pixel 10. The latter is only a tiny bit brighter. The speakers are good too. The OnePlus 15 is significantly louder than the iPhone 17 and also louder than the Pixel 10. While the sound quality is solid, the two competitors have slightly more pleasant treble. Let's move on to the design. It weighs 211 grams and is 8.1 millimeters thick. It weighs 211 grams and is 8.1 millimeters thick, both of which are pretty normal. We get a sturdy metal frame, and I've got this sand colored option here, which looks quite nice. I think the fact that it has an IP69 rating is pretty cool, as most only offer IP68. IP69 means it can also withstand high water pressure and high temperatures. At the bottom, there's a USB-C 3.2 Gen 1 port and a dual SIM slot. You can connect external monitors, but there isn't a desktop mode. The under-display fingerprint sensor reacts very quickly and works reliably. Let's talk about cameras. I've taken hundreds of photos with the OnePlus 15 and I've really enjoyed it, especially with the telephoto camera. We get 3 on the back in total. A 50 megapixel main camera with a 1.8 aperture, a 50 megapixel ultra wide with an f2.0 aperture, and then the telephoto with a 2.8 aperture, which is a 3.5x zoom or 85mm converted to full frame. The front camera offers a resolution of 32 megapixels. With standard settings, the OnePlus 15's main camera is a little bit sharper than the Google Pixel 10, which only shoots at 12 megapixels. The OnePlus 15 defaults to 26 megapixels, and those show significantly more detail than the iPhone 17 with its standard 24 megapixel resolution. But in 50 megapixel mode, the photos from the OnePlus 15 don't look as good. I almost get the feeling they're using some kind of AI help here. Because compared to the 48 megapixel photos from the iPhone 17, you can see significantly more detail on the iPhone. And no strange effects. The 26 megapixel mode on the OnePlus is much nicer than the 50 megapixel mode. I think it's a shame that you can only take raw photos at 12 megapixel and not the full 50. That's the case with tons of phones, but I don't think you need raw without the full resolution. So if you want to take high resolution landscapes and fully control everything, it's not really suitable for that. But sure, most people don't need RAW anyway, and I think OnePlus's JPEGs or HEIC files are quite nice. I've taken lots of photos with it that don't even need to be edited. And even photos with a high ISO look surprisingly usable. But as a camera nerd, I still wish for 50 megapixel RAW files. With the ultra-wide camera, the Pixel 10 is slightly sharper than the OnePlus. But the iPhone 17 looks significantly worse by comparison. Again, all with standard settings. The OnePlus 15 wins hands down with the telephoto cameras. Although it only has a 3.5x zoom compared to the 5x zoom of the Pixel 10, photos look almost equally sharp. And a 3.5x zoom is much more useful in reality than 5x. As I said, I particularly like the telephoto camera, and I find 3.5x much more useful than 4x or 5x. It's a fantastic camera. The front camera looks good overall, but the 32 megapixel photos aren't sharper than those from the iPhone or Pixel, even though their photos are lower resolution. I actually think the Pixel's better. Theoretically, you can record up to 8K videos, but that barely makes sense with a small phone sensor. I mostly recorded in 4K, and I think the video quality is very good overall and stands up well. Even in poor lighting conditions, by the way. The OnePlus 15 ships with Oxygen OS 16, which is based on Android 16. The user interface is clean, fast, and largely free of unnecessary bloatware. We find the new Mindspace feature particularly exciting. On the left, there's a power button that lets you analyze everything on your screen. For example, I've gotten an email here about the Showstoppers event. When I press the button, the email's analyzed and Mindspace immediately suggests adding the event to my calendar. If you long press that button, you can record voice memos, which are also analyzed, and depending on the topic, the AI suggests what you can do. Gemini is pre-installed too, of course. You can also assign completely different functions to this button, by the way, similar to iPhones. I don't have any info on updates yet, but I'm assuming it will get at least 6 years of security updates and 4 years of version updates. Maybe even more. As soon as I have info on that, it'll go in the description. Let's talk about battery life. The battery is very large at 7,300 mAh. In our standardized battery test, the OnePlus 15 achieves a runtime of 27.68 hours. So pretty good, especially since the display is quite bright. For our test, we always run an HD YouTube video on a continuous loop at max brightness. Overall, I really like the OnePlus 15. I find it especially exciting for gamers, naturally because of the new Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 and the display that allows up to 165 FPS. The battery life is also long, the design's pretty, and having an IP69 rating is nice too. I also think the 3.5x telephoto camera is great. As I said, I really enjoy taking photos with it. And overall, I think the cameras are pretty good, at least if you're not taking raw photos. Because I really miss the full 50 megapixels here. That's why it isn't a good choice for camera nerds. In the US, prices start at $8.99, and I think that's a pretty good price and a pretty good value for what you're getting here. And that'll likely continue to be that way in the future. In a couple of months, Samsung and other brands will release phones with the same Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, and by that time, the OnePlus will have been available for a while already and will likely be a much better deal. If the cameras and RAW shots are particularly important to you, you should definitely check out our comparison of the iPhone 17 Pro Max with the Pixel 10 Pro XL and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We compared the cameras in detail and the results are pretty surprising.